Host is Lee. Oh, thank you, Lee. I always forget to record. My co-host is Lee Taylor. Lee is the State Interagency Council Program Administrator, and we work at the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. We want to thank you for joining us. Today's session is titled Services Provided for Families and Youth Once Youth Age Out. And our speakers are Andrea Polk. She's the Children's System of Care Administrator with Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. We also have Brittany Bickett here with us. She's the Adult System of Care Administrator, also with Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. And they're going to be talking with us today about Kentucky's SKY program. We also have Ashley Randall with us today. Ashley is the Program Director of YAP Incorporated. And before I turn it over to our presenters, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. So please mute your mics if you haven't already. However, feel free to unmute during the session as needed to add to the conversation. You are also welcome to use the chat box if you prefer for questions and or comments. I did speak with our presenters before the session started just to make sure that they were comfortable with questions coming during the session as opposed to at the end of the session. So again, you can raise your hand, you can ask to unmute, or you can put it in the chat box and we'll address those as they come. And Lee and I are going to be monitoring it during the session. This workshop will be recorded and it's going to be posted on the REACT YouTube channel, and we'll put that link in the chat box. Also, a session evaluation will be posted in the chat box closer to the end of the session, so please take a moment to complete it at that time. And as always, certificates of attendance are available by request. You can email me if you'd like to have one, and I'll put my email in the chat box as well. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Andrea and Brittany with Aetna.
Hi, so right now it's just Andrea with Aetna. Brittany's having some technical difficulties getting into Zoom. So she's going to maybe have to call in at this point. So we'll just, I'll go ahead and get started because she was going to do the second part anyway. So nice to see you all. A lot of you all know me. I see some very familiar names on here. Again, I'm Andrea Polk. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor, and I am the Children's System of Care Administrator here at Aetna SKY. So today we're going to be talking about the SKY program, but then also specifically tailored to our transition age youth. So we do have two types of trainings, one that is a little bit longer of a SKY overview and one that is just on transition age youth. And so we're kind of combining the two today to go over a brief overview. So agenda, kind of what we're going to discuss today is what is our mission here at SKY, what does it mean to be eligible and how to enroll, what it looks like once you get started with the SKY program, our primary care physicians and dental assignments, how our care management works, what is Aetna's response to working with this population, and going over our value-added benefits and a few additional resources. So what is SKY? Aetna Better Health of Kentucky was selected to manage the state's new Supporting Kentucky Youth Program, also known as SKY. This means that children and youth enrolled in SKY will receive Medicaid coverage specifically through Aetna. In addition to covering Medicaid benefits, SKY will provide a high-touch approach to care management. So we're very involved and embedded with the members that we serve. This means that we can help families and youth navigate the system a little bit easier and help find and provide the resources that they need. So when we're talking about transition age youth and the SKY program, we are looking at youth that are system involved and between the ages of 12 and 26. Now for today's purposes, we'll be focusing more on when we talk about transition age youth, 18 and older, but we do here at Aetna start working with youth at early as age 12, because we do want to empower them to start using some soft skills like chores and money management, and then also really starting to work on building a natural support system for these youth so that once they do turn 18, they have that network of support as they're transitioning into adulthood. So we like to say that we want to walk alongside our members. So a lot of times we talk about extending foster care and what that looks like. And so for some of our youth at the age of 18, they have the option to ask to extend their commitment with the state. So there's a new revision to the statute. They had to apply before the age of 19, but now it's before the age of 20 to ask to extend their commitment. So Aetna's mission, and I mentioned earlier that, a big piece is walking alongside our youth and really in enhancing what they need in life to have a good life and be successful. So some of the ways that we do that is achieving safety and permanency for the youth that we serve. We try to work on reducing the use of psychotropic medications. And one way that we do this is we do have consults with the medical director of DCBS, Dr. Lohr, and we work on improving health outcomes, looking at those social determinants of health that are lacking for the members we serve, and incorporate youth voice and choice. And again, that is really important for our transitioned age youth, and what I mean by walking alongside them and ensuring that our care plans are reflective of the goals that they want to achieve. So who is eligible to enroll in the SKY program? So youth and children in the foster care system, right? Youth and children that are placed with a fictive kin or kinship, youth that are both duly committed to DCBS and DJJ, children and youth with juvenile justice involvement that are Medicaid eligible, children and youth 18 and under who are eligible due to being out of state with a relative placement here in Kentucky, children and youth who are receiving interstate adoption assistance. Maybe they were adopted in another state, but have now moved to Kentucky, for example. And then adoption assistance youth and children. So youth that have also been adopted out of the foster care system in Kentucky. So who can opt out of SKY? So there are two populations that can opt out of the SKY program. One is the adoption assistance children and youth. Adoptive families do have the option to opt out and choose a different MCO. And then former foster care youth. So youth that are 18 and have aged out of the system can choose to stay with the SKY program, or they can choose to opt out of it. The one neat thing though is people can opt back in. So if initially adoptive families or former foster youth chose to opt out of SKY, they do have the option to opt back in. And what they would need to do is contact the Department of Medicaid Services for both reasons, if they want to opt out or if they would like to opt back in, sorry. So next, we're going to start talking about getting started with SKY, unless there's any questions so far. Okay. So how do members get started with SKY? So what's going to happen is when they're enrolled with Aetna SKY, they're going to get mailed a new member packet that includes a handbook and then a SKY member companion guide, because they do get the Aetna Medicaid, but then there's some things that are just specific to the SKY program. So it's going to explain how SKY Medicaid works. It's going to give helpful resources to our Sky members. It's going to explain more about how our case management works with primary care physicians, dentists, DCBS, DJJ. They will also receive their ID cards in the mail. And this is what our ID cards look like. It's kind of like a regular insurance card that also has pharmacy information on it. And so that's very important to a lot of our youth. And I will say that I know sometimes because youth move placements, I know they don't always get their cards, and sometimes they're mailed to their DCBS workers because that's the address we have on file. If that happens, they can work with our member services, they can call their case manager, and we can work on getting them a card. If there is a true emergency and they need to get medicine filled, we can also give them their ID number and the information they need for the pharmacy over the phone. And we have had to do that multiple times. So what do our primary care physician and dental assignments look like? So at Aetna, as soon as we receive placement information for the enrollee through the supplemental file that comes from the state, we automatically assign a primary care physician that is at least within 30 miles of the current child's placement, unless otherwise requested. So we are going to initially assign a PCP, but that does not mean people can't use ones that they prefer or have used in the past. So that's not hard and fast that they have to use that PCP. It's just something that we do complimentary to go ahead and get them assigned. And then we also assign dental providers. We do contract with the VSIS, who manages our dental services. But again, at any time, DCBS, a caregiver, a transition age youth can ask and request that that be changed. So that's, again, not hard and fast. And you can work with our member services, case manager to get that done. So we also have the promise to ensure that everybody is getting physical, dental, and vision care. So as soon as we get an enrollee, we are reaching out to ensure that they're getting a medical, a vision, and dental exam within 2 weeks. We know sometimes that's not always possible, but we do our best. And I really want to point out and highlight that $25 gift cards are given to our members for each of the exams that they are completing. So now I'm going to go in a little bit about care management and what that looks like here, because again, I mentioned earlier, it's high touch and we're very embedded in the youth that we serve. And so, we are in the communities, we're in residential placements, we're coordinating with workers and youth and independent living coordinators, providers to ensure that appropriate care is given. I mean, one of our big things is that we are giving the right care to the right person in the right amounts at the right time that they need it. And that's going to look different for each individual. And so some of the things that we do here is assist in locating providers, obtaining those appointments, trying to necessitate an escalation of those appointments if possible, working on transportation services if that's needed, finding community supports and resources, anything that we can tailor to that individual.
Hey, Andrea.
Yeah.
Before we go on, we've got a question in the chat box.
Okay.
And actually, Brittany might have just answered it. Was how do they receive the gift card that you were talking about if they complete the exam?
Okay, and Brittany did answer it.
Yes, so she has said once they verify the member has made the visit, the member can call member services or request from their case manager. Does that answer the question about the gift card?
Yeah, and we also use claims data, right? So if we get a claim that they attended a dental appointment, we also will pull from that as well too. But our case managers are always able to follow up on those as well. So stratification, right? What does this look like? we have 3 levels of case management here at Aetna. And we start off with the bottom, which is like just population health needs. And so we're going to do initially a lot of comprehensive assessments and screeners to know which level of care we should put our youth in. And I should say that also DCBS caregivers can also request to kind of flow up and down as needed. And so the one thing I do want to point out is, like, somebody could start off in pop health, but then some things start to happen and we need to bump them up to more intensive, right? Or things are stabilizing and going well, so maybe we'll bop them down to pop health. And we use those comprehensive assessments and screeners to make those determinations alongside the youth and their caregivers. So with population health, we're talking about just limited healthcare needs. We're doing quarterly outreach. With our intensive case management, though, there's some moderate acuity. There's not constant crisis, but there is risk of crisis or some crisis that is going on. And that could be medically, behavioral health. There's going to be weekly contact, and we're going to monthly update care plans, and we are doing face-to-face meetings. Then we have the complex care coordination, and that's where our more complex needs are. So youth with multiple behavioral health admissions, or our youth that are designated medically complex. They're going to get 2 hours of care coordination a week and 2 monthly face-to-face visits. And so we are making weekly contact with the member or youth, but then we're also going to be making contact to any other person that is pertinent to the case management team. Our Hi-Fi wraparound program also falls into this level of case management. And so they also are working with our high needs behavioral health youth to build that natural support system to wrap around the youth in times of needs and crisis. So we also have the Aetna Behavioral Health System of Care. So in our system of care team, we also have a behavioral health clinician, which was my previous role, and then a behavioral health specialist. And their roles are to identify and remove barriers for our youth, help our youth members, families, DCBS, and our case managers locate resources and supports for these youth, attend difficult to place or clinical consults with central office. We also collaborate with providers and the agencies, maybe through family team meetings or preservation meetings. We assist with post-adoption cases. And so that's the bigger overall role of that team. But we also have a behavioral health case management team. And these case managers are spread out through the 9 DCBS regions, and they are embedded in all the inpatient psychiatric hospitals and our psychiatric residential treatment facilities. They're there to ensure a safe and good discharge plan for our youth. And so that's one of the big things that they do. Also, with this team is our peer support specialist, and they are instrumental in working, especially with our transition age youth. Peer support specialists have that lived experience. A lot of our peer support specialists have been in the foster system, our foster parents, our adoptive parents, and they're there to help guide the youth, walk again alongside them, help empower them, and get action steps moving forward. So again, our case management team, not only are they doing the basics, right, of finding providers, ensuring appointments, but we're also forward facing. We're out at emergency shelters. If we know of, we're going to meet the youth where they're at, if that's at a tailored drop-in, wherever it is, to ensure that they have the services that they need. So I have done my part of the presentation, and Brittany, I think you are on here now. And so we're going to move into Aetna's approach to working with transition age youth specifically.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah,
Good. Okay.
there you are.
My apologies. I had some issues with Zoom this morning when I was trying to get on, so I apologize. We did have a question in the chat. So when you talk about behavioral health case management in your Hi-Fi RAP team, this is not targeted case management, right? Yes. Yeah.
Correct. It is not targeted case management. Targeted case management, right, is going to be billable, Medicaid, with our providers. If there is a Hi-Fi wraparound case manager in the region they live, right, and they have openings, we are not going to be in competition with them. We are going to utilize Hi-Fi case management. This is going to be utilized when, say, there's just not another Hi-Fi case manager in that region available. I hope that answers the question.
I answered another question in the chat. They asked, can they have an Aetna case management in addition to outside case management providers, say from a behavioral health provider? I said, yes, they usually collaborate together to develop a plan of care. So a lot of times you'll see our case managers talk to other provider case managers, and they'll have like those open calls, especially in a crisis. So I see that, very frequently here at Aetna. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. Again, I apologize for hopping on a little late. My name is Brittany Bickett. I'm the Adult Systems of Care Administrator here with Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. I work very closely with our transition age youth. So I'll go ahead and get started. So Aetna is always, the SKY program is always wanting to facilitate change. So we have a couple different approaches doing that. We have several programs to offer. One of those being Governance Council. That includes gathering together with key stakeholders and leaders to work together and move into action. We have our training collaborative. So that's shared needs of what to learn, but also sharing pockets of brilliance already doing this. We have several subcategories of our training collaborative. We have our systems training collaborative. We have our family training collaborative, education work group. All of these work groups work on different topics that are very crucial to the community. And if you're ever interested, please feel free to reach out to myself or Andrea, and we can get you directed to the correct contact. We have Changing the Course, and that includes the training collaborative curriculum for everyone around the process and product. We have Family Finding, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on in the presentation. But that includes support for state providers, shelters, Aetna, to learn more, practice, and receive coaching. This is Family First Work. It's Bedrock Science, and we have several toolkits for searching for family and engagement. We have ongoing coaching monthly for our internal subject matter experts, and then of course our DCBS experts too as well. We have our member advisory councils and focus groups. We must listen to lived experience. That is the most powerful thing, in my opinion. We don't know what we don't know. And all of these are designed to create space for listening. We have stakeholder engagement. So community-led organizations, community presence, other community support systems. Think about like a cliff analogy, food pantries, medication assistant treatment facilities. This all includes, engagement in systems of care. We have a Family Connect overview. So that includes, data integration that's key to continuity of care for physical health, behavioral health, and socially necessary services. We have several case managers that are an expert with social determinants of health. So a lot of times we will help navigate those resources for them. I left off HERO, and we'll go into a little bit more detail about that later on in the presentation too as well. And with access, Aetna is committed to ensuring the foster child's privacy is protected and has protocols in place to manage access to Family Connect. Beginning, since February 1st, 2020, Family Connect was limited to members, providers and care managers. Over the course of the last several years, the access was expanded to include other members of the child's care circle. So that can include guardians, caseworkers, and supervisors, and also juvenile court officers. We can go on to the next slide. I want to be mindful of our time. So HERO is a program we offer, and it's developed in response to youth currently leaving care. And this helps combat the loneliness and homelessness in the public. We have workshops that are catalysts to the process and bring youth of like lived experience together to see they're not alone. So if you think about a peer roundtable in a sense, this is a workshop where several people with the same experiences get to, converse and think of new ideas and develop supports along, in that multi-day workshop. With the intent, the youth will leave care with these networks and relationships, in contrast, so they're not lonely and unsupported. They develop that independence, and this helps combat those poor health outcomes too. Some youth evolve as peer navigators who then co-facilitate workshops in the future. We've had several successful workshops the past 3 years since we've started HERO. And several of those who have come out of that HERO workshop are now co-facilitating those workshops. So it's a wonderful program. If you have any interest in that too as well, feel free to reach out to myself or Andrea, and we can get you directed to the correct contact to get those youth involved. We also have Charting the Life course. So all of our Aetna case managers are trained on using Charting the Life course. They can utilize this framework with our youth. It helps the youth to start planning and envisioning what a good life for them looks like. So it's person-centered framework. It was developed by people with disabilities and their families. And this can be used by anybody at any stage in life. So, we start usually around 13, 14, that transition age range. But of course, if we have somebody who opts back into care, we can always, do Charting the Life course at a later date. And this, helps people develop their vision of good life. And, that what their plan will be and what to get them there. And we have several supports and services. This is a wonderful program. And I'll talk a little bit more about transition age youth as we move along in the presentation. Family finding. I'm one of the facilitators for family finding here at Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. So this is identifying natural and informal connections that can help support the young adult transition into their next phase. The professionals in their lives can help identify, foster, and nurture those connections through participation in family finding boot camps. We will have several family finding boot camps this year. We will also have family finding overviews for leadership and staff that may be interested in, the boot camp but may not be able to commit to a full week. The professionals in the youth's life are at the table to help build and have those healthy relationships that can sustain through adulthood. So family finding is very similar to HERO in a way, but this is, a paradigm shift. It's a different way of thinking. We work very closely with our DCBS partners, and we train on this regularly. Myself, Dawn Burke, our trauma systems of care administrator, and Joy Varney. We work very closely to do coaching every month. We also work very closely with cases every month that, a lot of times you'll hear this child has nobody. So this is something that we sit down and we develop a network. So there's several tools we teach on. One of those being the 4 love questions. You can ask, who loves this child? Who could love this child? Who does the child love? And who does not love this child? And you can list out all of those resources and connections that this child could build and start reaching out to those people. And there's just several tools to help facilitate that. But this really helps build and heal relationships. And in my opinion, it's very sustainable through adulthood. It's been very successful so far. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself and I can invite you to one of our family finding meetings. And of course, I'll send out a flyer too for our family finding boot camps in the future. So we have SCI councils. We have 4. We have 3 listed here, and then I'll talk about our peer roundtables here in a second. We have our member advisory council. So this is for the youth and families to share their lived experience, for us to hear their voice, and this will help facilitate change even more. Our member advisory council that includes SCI members age 16 and up, former, adoption, DJJ, DCBS, former foster youth. Our Foster Parent Advisory Council, the eligibility for that is foster parents, DCBS, impact plus regular medically complex, private child placing, and so much more. Our Family Advisory Council is your bio parents, adoptive parents, fictive kin, relative caregivers. And then the fourth not listed here is our peer roundtables. So our peer roundtables, again, is very similar to our member advisory council, former foster youth, SCI members. We started at 12 years old and up. A lot of times when we go into independent living facilities, we see members that are grouped, 12 years to 26 years. And we start at 12 years of age and older. Our peer roundtables are that lived experience as well. And we have different topics of interest. So I'm one of the leaders of our peer roundtables, and we've had several topics come up the last 3 years, one of those being substance use disorder. So we've had a peer roundtable with those who have lived experience to help discuss, further ideas to enhance Aetna Better Health of Kentucky and collaborate with other programs across the state to make, their transition into adulthood that much better. It's a great program. If you're interested in joining any of these councils, or you think that somebody may be interested in joining these councils, feel free to reach out to myself, and I can send you a flyer as well. And our dates are recurring 4 times a year. We'll have one in March, June, September, and November. If you are interested, you can also have your member reach out to member services, and they can direct you in the right direction to get registered. We have an ombudsman here at Aetna Better Health of Kentucky. He's our SCI inquiry coordinator. He speaks with providers to identify pain points or concerning trends related to care and service delivery, and then works together to find solutions. He educates on grievance and appeal processes. He trains SCI staff on certain areas of concerns. He may provide, suggestions to SCI, the Department of Medicaid Services, DCBS, DJJ, on inquiries and complaints made by SCI and for SCI providers. So one of the things about our SCI member advisory councils and foster parent councils and peer roundtables, any concerns that we may discuss in those councils, we can bring to Jesse Kane, and he will then further investigate that, and that helps build new programs too in the future and facilitate change as well. We have several value-added benefits, and I will include that in the chat once I'm done with this presentation for you all to look at. So value-added benefits are enhanced benefits that are offered at the discretion of the health plan. These services, coupled with covered services, aim to improve quality of life and health outcomes for enrollees. They are a critical component of the overall program and will provide another path that leads to our enrollees achieving optimal health. Our next slide includes a list of several of our value-added benefits. You can read for the child and welfare system. We have several listed here: back to school program, birthday in a box, foster care duffel bags. The list goes on. For Getting on Track, our transition age youth specifically, that's one that I've helped develop the last couple of years. Getting on Track is going to be your curriculum for those folks that are aging out of the system, and to make them be sustainable and successful. So some of the topics of Getting on Track include is your driver's education. It includes healthy relationships, which I lead, talks about understanding what is a healthy relationship, what is an unhealthy relationship. There's Finance 101. There's understanding what insurance is. Advocating for yourself is a great one. We also have a slow cooker class, to where at the end of that slow cooker class, you will get a free crock pot. So it's really cool. I love it. If you're interested in joining any of these overviews and education presentations, feel free to reach out to myself. Our goal for the year is to get into our independent living facilities across the state and host a different topic every month. But I'm really excited about this. We have several benefits, and of course you can find all of these in your member handbook. But the value added benefits, they get a gift card for attending each one of these education trainings, or any of these programs are, available to them. But just a lot of wonderful things. The foster care duffel bags, children in foster care system without stable housing often lack a way to carry their belongings. So this way, Aetna provides a personalized duffel bag for them, filled with personal hygiene items. It's a wonderful program. The birthday in a box program too. This program recognizes the children's birthdays, and it focuses on medically fragile and transition age children that would otherwise not be acknowledged. So each child on their birthday receives a birthday in a box, and that includes party supplies, paper goods, minimal party decorations, but balloons, a book, journal, puzzles, games, and then a large cupcake. So the birthday in a box is arranged and delivered by the foster care manager. So those are just a few of our value added benefits. Again, I'll include those into the chat, but it's a wonderful program, and I'm really excited to get this year started, especially with the Getting on Track. So we also have application processes for a laptop and a cell phone. So Sky members or their legal guardian, DCBS, DJJ workers, they can contact their case manager. And their case manager, once they verify their eligibility, sends info to iFoster, and then the iFoster staff will then reach out to that member and set them up with a laptop or cell phone. And the email is stated there. Again, we can send out more information on this after the presentation, but this is a wonderful program, especially for our transition age youth. I see a lot of times that's their greatest need, is just getting a laptop or a cell phone, and that, helps facilitate, collaborating with their case manager when they're aging out, applying for a job, applying to school, just being prepared to be an adult in our, technical world. Here's a brief picture of our member guide. Again, you can find this on our website. We can send you a copy if interested, but it explains all your value-added benefits in there too as well, how to obtain those, how to obtain your gift card for attending those medical appointments, how to find a provider, anything really you can think of. I'm not going to go into super detail about the member guide. It is 72 pages long. So, but if you all are interested, feel free to go to our website. You can look it up. There's a lot of great stuff in there.
Brittany, I think, do we have some questions in the chat? I'm presenting, so I can't see them all, Vanessa.
Yes, we do. So one of the questions in there is, what are the details with Smile Kentucky?
What, Smile Kentucky?
One
Smile
of our
Kentucky.
value-added benefits.
I believe so, yeah.
So Smile Kentucky, so it's children's dental health. It's access to care. So a lot of times access across the state is difficult. So according to the 2011-2012 National Survey of Children's Health, 18.6% of children in Kentucky ages 1 to 17 had one or more oral health problems and had an unmet need for dental care during the last 12 months. Additionally, 40 to 50% of children in Kentucky are receiving dental services. Aetna, in partnership with the University of Louisville Dental School, will offer free mobile dental clinics and dental screenings to elementary children in Region 3. This value-added service will be provided to increase preventative oral care, detection of tooth decay, and other oral health issues while reducing functional limitations to care. So this also has expanded across the state. Kelly Pullen, our executive director, she is looking into expanding that even further across the state. But we have those mobile U of L dental clinic vans. So what it is, there may be a health fair or something in the community going on, and we will, try to coordinate with case management to get our members to go to that location to be able to receive that preventative dental care, especially in our crucial rural areas where there's limited access to care. Do we have another question too? Let me see.
That is all of the questions that I see right now in the chat box. We do have some resources that have been listed in there. And what I'll do is I will pull those from the chat box and I will put a follow-up email together and include that information to all the participants on this call.
Okay.
I'll also ask too, I was going to ask at the end, but are we able to share your PowerPoint with participants on this call?
I believe so. I think we have a version to where it's a PDF. So I can get that to you. And I'll also send your way to the value added benefits listed, the peer-to-peer roundtable flyer I attached in the chat. That is from last year. We are waiting for compliance to get back to us to approve our new 2023 flyer. So I will, as soon as that's approved, I will also send that out to you all. And of course, too, when we get our family finding flyer too, with those upcoming dates, I'll send that out to the group too as well. So yeah, we'll send all these things your way. And then with all these resources listed too, there's some great resources in there, especially for our transition age youth. So feel free to take a look when you get it. And of course, always feel free to reach out to myself or Andrea Polk if you have any questions, and we can direct you to the right staff.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you both for presenting today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Randall with YAP. She's going to talk to us about her program. She's the program director there. And if you guys have any questions for the first part of our session, if you want to hold those now until the end, we've got a little bit of time carved out for Q&A, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Ashley and let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button. I was like, where's it at? All right. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can you see my screen here? My presentation, is it showing?
Your presentation is, okay, there it goes. I was going to say we were seeing the notes part of it too, but now we see the full
Gotcha.
presentation.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So my name is Ashley Randall. I'm the program director here with Youth Advocate Programs in Fayette County, Kentucky. I did want to just take a moment to also tell you guys that we are expanding currently. So we have a program in Jefferson County, Kentucky, Louisville. We also just got one started in Paducah, McCracken County. And then we are in the process of expanding to Bowling Green, Hopkinsville, E-Town, and I believe one other location. Hopefully by the end of this year, we will be in 7 counties in Kentucky. So I started out as an advocate and then later promoted to program director. So my experience within the program comes from like being out in the community, doing the work, and then promoting to more of a leadership role. So the mission and vision of YAP is basically to help youth remain safely in their homes and in their communities, and also the longevity of their success once they age out and are on their own in independent living. So the way that we're able to do that is a couple of different ways. We have several different programs here. We try to work within their community and get to the root cause of like whatever is going on that may be creating some barriers for them. So typically this is kids that might be at risk of going to a residential placement or being placed in foster care or detention or just different types of facilities along those lines. So we're trying to come in and figure out what are those barriers and how we can prevent them from being subject to other placement so that they can remain home and in their community as long as it is safe to do so. Obviously, we understand that everybody's needs are different and some circumstances do require a higher level of care. So basically, you know, our philosophy at YAP is that no matter what we've got going on in our life, we all have things that we're passionate about and we all have things that we're good at. So we really just try to focus in on that. And we're very strength-based and positive, and then we can set our goals from that point. So we recognize too that it really does take a village, right? Like we all hear that phrase all the time that it takes a village to raise a child. But we really believe and embody that philosophy here at YAP because having a sense of community can really change the trajectory of our lives, but no matter what age that we are. So we recognize that and we want to be able to bring in people within our community, resources and connections to help heal our families and strengthen the relationships that they have with one another and in their community community, so that we really are embodying that kind of it takes a village philosophy and supporting our clients and our families. We also, want to make sure that we're connecting people with things that they may not otherwise know about. So our youth, and I think our previous presenter, stated like a lot of young people don't feel like they have anybody that is supportive and loving, or they don't feel like they know how to access resources when they need them. They don't know the, pro-social activities that are available to them, or just different services and opportunities that they can have. Just a lot of the families that we work with don't know what exists. And like the previous presenter said, we don't know what we don't know, right? So we're just here to, help facilitate and identify what is available to help meet the needs that have been currently going unmet, that are putting our youth at risk for alternative placements. We also are very youth and family voice led. We know that nobody else can speak to what their challenges are, what's going on in their life better than they can, right? So they're an expert in what is going on and what they need. Four philosophies of YAP are: what do you need? How can we help? How can we work together? And how can we give back? So a lot of times when our clients come to us, the first thing that we say is those first three: what do you need? How can we help? And how can we work together? And then once we get them to a better place, we definitely want to hit on that how can we give back component as well, because we are a community and we want to embody, supporting our community as a whole. The best way for us to support our youth and families is to really identify what is really going on underneath all of, the behaviors or the challenges that they're facing, or what has led to them being where they are. What has caused that, and how can we fix it? How can we bridge the gaps? What can we do to provide services to support these youth and families so that, again, the longevity of their success in life is going to be greater? So YAP has been around since 1975. We are in all of the states here listed on this graphic. We serve approximately 16,500 families annually. We're constantly growing. We are in 33 states plus DC. We also have some sister programs overseas as well. So we're rapidly growing and expanding, just recognizing that there needs to be services that can come in and support the youth and the family as a whole, so that we as a nation can be successful. All of our programming, as I mentioned, is community-based. It all starts in our homes and in our communities, right? So to continue to grow and expand and improve upon our quality of life, we have to be able to do that right there at home and in our community. Again, that just goes back to the prevention of our entire goal is to help kids remain in their homes and in the community. That means that the work has to happen in the homes and in the communities. So our target population is any youth that are at risk of being removed from their homes. So like we talked about before, that could be residential facilities, it could be secure settings such as detention centers, things like that, or any other form of congregate care. We typically work with teens. Some of our programs throughout the U.S. work with younger youth and older youth, but here in Fayette County, our age range is actually 11 through 17, specifically for the intensive services, but making sure that we're putting in the services to help them transition beyond turning 18. So we're coming in while they're younger, so that we can put in all of the supports that they're going to need to do well once they are transitioning to adulthood and young adulthood. We do serve a majority of youth of color and majority male youth. However, we service everybody that needs it. We try to make sure that when we are working with clients, we match them with advocates and mentors that live in the community that they live in. So even if they live within Lexington, we want them to live in the same neighborhood and be familiar with what is going on in that particular neighborhood, be familiar with the schools in that area. We also consider demographic information plus lived experience, professional experience, and educational experience as well. Representation matters. And so we want to make sure that we are diligent about matching youth to advocates and mentors that are relatable, that they feel like can support and walk this journey with them, and understanding, what is going on and being supportive. everything. We like to say, we're just here to walk this journey with you, but ultimately it's up to you, kind of which direction that it heads. So this is some of the outcomes throughout the last several years that YAP has been. So this includes nationally, not just locally. On our local level, though, our success rate after discharge is actually 87% as of this past year. So that means that when our youth graduate from our program or they're discharged from our program, they go on to be successful in their community, and 97% nationally. And that's pretty accurate on the local level as well. Our youth are not receiving, if they're court involved, they're not receiving new charges or having any type of new offenses while they're in the program. And even post-discharge, we're making sure that, they're not recidivating and continuing to make good choices in life and being their best selves. We also really focused on education. So wanting to make sure that our youth are being able to get their high school diplomas or their GED and then go on to some sort of post-secondary education if that is the desire that they have. So breaking down our services a little bit more. So this talks a lot about nationally. So you'll hear me talk about what YAP does nationally, but then I'll also explain specifically what we do at the local level. So our programs throughout all of the US consist of youth justice, child welfare, behavioral health, school-based programs, anti-violence, and then there's a little scope of just don't really fit into any of those categories, but we're not going to not support all of our youth and families in our community. Our Lexington Fayette County program specifically is more of the youth justice and child welfare with some of the other things sprinkled in. We don't currently have behavioral health providers within YAP, so we partner with and collaborate with other behavioral health providers to make sure that our youth and families are still getting those services that they definitely need. Some of our other programs, though not in Fayette County, do have like actual therapists or mental health specialists in their programs. We just haven't got that far yet in Fayette County, but it is something we're working on. We've just only been here for 4 years, so we're just continuing to grow and expand. We have had some school-based programming. It just kind of all comes down to funding. We had the opportunity for a year to provide some school-based anger management mentoring and services as a preventative measure. We're just working to get that back going now. We just had like a 1 year kind of mini opportunity to do that. So we're working to continue to grow that department. But even though we're mostly child welfare and youth justice here in Fayette County, we also definitely hit on the anti-violence. We are reachable 24/7. All of our staff is trained in crisis management, de-escalation, so that if there is something that's going on within the home, we want to try to go right away to the family, or at least get on the phone with them or assess what is going on. Some of these families just feel overwhelmed and they don't know how to handle certain situations. So we are reachable 24/7 for those situations. We talk about crisis management, de-escalation, things like that. That could look different for everybody, right? Because some of our families, they just have a lot going on and they're just really overwhelmed. Maybe, it's a single parent home or a grandparent home, and they're raising multiple children, plus they're trying to work or different things like that. And that can be easily overwhelming. So if you have a child that is going through some things or has some difficult things that are going on, maybe that's coming out as anger. Maybe that's being filtered through a place of anger, and the parent or guardian or, whomever is in the home has a hard time, dealing with that and understanding, like, how do I support this very angry child? And that's just one example. But so we want to try to be able to come in and help work on coping skills and help them to, as a family, strengthen their family unit so they can navigate those situations together. Want to try to be preventative. A lot of the families that we work with, it's kind of their habit to call the police or, go down to the CDW's office and file beyond control or things like that. And not that those are not great things and sometimes necessary services. We want to try to intervene before it has to get to that point. And how can we help? And, can we be a mediator? Can we help the child to de-escalate and then come back together with the family to process through whatever is going on? So there's lots of different things that we try to address, but the anti-violence comes in that being reachable 24/7 for whatever the child and family feels like may be a crisis or preventing a violent situation, because it could just be not knowing how to de-escalate just a difficult situation. So these are some of our programs for our youth justice. So some of our youth come to us on a diversion. So that's things like I previously mentioned, where they might be on a beyond control or runaway, truancy, some of those kinds of things. Or maybe they've never been in trouble before, so they get the opportunity to do a diversion. In Fayette County, youth are awarded the opportunity to do a diversion, typically around 3 times. Once they have, completed 3 separate diversions, then they kind of move further into the juvenile justice process. That's not always the case, but that's just a typically kind of what we see. We also work with youth that are pre-adjudicated, so they've got a case pending in court. We're trying to be, helping them to remain in the community, not have to go to detention or facility or things along those lines. So coming in and how can we help this youth to remain safe in their home and in their community, but work through the things that have led to them being potentially adjudicated in some criminal-based charges. Also post-adjudication. So once they have gone through the court process, continuing that, how can we help support the whole child and the whole family so that they can be successful? And then also reintegration and reentry. Maybe they have had to go to some sort of a placement and now they're going to be coming back to the community. We want to wrap around that whole child and that whole family to help them be successful. I'm going to pause because I see a couple of things in the chat. So just looking to see if there are any questions specifically for me. Okay, so it looks like somebody's reaching out privately. So thank you for that. I will definitely reach out to you and we will communicate. Are there any other questions or just kind of taking a pause? Anybody want to ask anything else for a moment? Okay. And it's just me. So sorry, I got to multitask here, but, so really just any kind of court involvement for the juvenile justice system is what we focus on for that particular part of our programming. Some of our youth in the youth justice, we have 2 different programs here in Fayette County though. So one of them covers kind of the diversion, the pre-adjudication aspect. That's our prevention or diversion program. And then our other program is our alternative to detention program. That focuses a little bit more on the youth that are that post-adjudication or reintegration or reentry into the community. So I'm just kind of moving along. We also have child welfare services here. And again, typically the child welfare side of our programming is on our prevention side. So this is trying to help preserve placement in their homes, trying to help them return to placement within their homes if they have been, out of the home for any length of time. Just trying to support that whole child and the whole family. Kind of what I've talked about before is just making sure that they have that support that they need so that they can stabilize and supporting them through any possible crisis. But again, crisis can be very fluid, just depending on, some people think of crisis and they think like the worst possible scenario, maybe severe, abuse or neglect or something like that. But we know that crisis could be something small as just not having basic needs met or not having access to resources or just being overwhelmed with life. That can be a crisis. Just when we talk about trauma, right, it doesn't have to be the really big serious things that we might see on the TV. It could be trauma can be, something minimal to some of us, but so big to other people. So just trying to keep, that at the forefront of the work that through our lens and our perception and our experiences, both lived and professionally and educationally, we are all going to view that differently. So a family in crisis isn't always going to be the same as the next family in crisis. We also want to help, our families be reunified if that is the appropriate thing for the child and the family, making sure that we're supporting that family so they can be successful in reunifying and remaining together. And then that's where the aging out comes in too, is making sure that we are putting all of the services in place and connecting our youth and families to outside sources. What we don't want to do in any of our programs is come in and provide a ton of support and resources and help and then bow out, and then that family feels like they don't still have that. So from day one, when we start working with a new client and family, we want to make sure that we are connecting them with outside sources as much as we are having them utilize our internal services as well. So we want to be very collaborative and stay aware of other things that are happening in our communities and other resources and connections. So We are always attending community events and just continuing to expand upon our knowledge of what resources are available to the children and families in our community. Even once a family is no longer in our program, we want to be able to connect them to a resource. If they reach out and they are struggling with something, we want to be able to connect them to services to help them transition. Just really want to empower the youth and the family to help themselves and know what is available even throughout the rest of their lives. Our behavioral health programs, again, in Fayette County, we don't specifically have a program here. We collaborate, gosh, I can't talk today. We collaborate with other partners. So some of our youth, for example, have individual therapy, group therapy, IOP, family therapy, substance use treatment, any of those kinds of things that the barrier to participate in those wonderful, amazing, and so necessary services is transportation. So that is something that we're able to help provide transportation to bridge that gap so that they can utilize the services that are available to them. Also, we try to make sure we have a list of who does what so that we can refer out to different providers if they are in need of individual or family therapy or an IOP or day treatment or substance use treatment, any of those kinds of things that we think a youth or a family would need that we don't provide. We want to know who does provide it so that we can refer out. And then also we have programs that work with youth and families with intellectual or developmental disabilities. Specifically to Fayette County, we have worked, we have worked with several youth that have autism. And we don't do early intervention services here in Fayette County. Again, some of our other programs do provide those services, but if it's something that we don't provide and there's a need, even if it's not with the client that has been referred to us, it's a sibling in the home or a parent, we want to be able to refer that family out. Because again, we're supporting the youth, the whole youth, but also the family as well, because we are wraparound. We have received lots of extensive training specifically about autism and supporting the autistic youth and family. And we have worked with a lot of clients. We want to make sure that they're getting the same resources that our neurotypical youth would be receiving. We want to make sure that they have access and are aware of the different resources that are available, because again, so much of the challenges with these families are that they just don't know what they don't know. They don't know what is available. They don't know what is out there. I'm just going to check the chat real quick. Looks like somebody, are youth able to double dip in regards to resource supports for transitioning out? For example, oops, I cannot figure out how to move. There we go. Okay. So yes, so could they work with us as well as, Aetna Community Action? Yes. We do not, we don't put them in a box, right? Like all the resources for all the youth and families, they are absolutely able to work with all of us. And we try to be just very collaborative. So we have child and family team meetings very often and invite anybody involved with the child. So if they have other service providers in place, we really want them more representative to be able to attend our child and family team meetings so that we know who's on first, right? Like we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not providing a service that they're also providing unless they need both of them at the same time. And an example of that would be, if they really need some intensive case management and it's beyond the scope that we can provide, or they need targeted case management or something along those lines, we want to work with that provider and make sure that we're not doing the same things just to maximize our services. But yes, absolutely and we love that because we feel like we get to help them at a deeper level, right? And help them be successful long-term, and that longevity is better, right? Because then they have all of the services that can help them be successful, and they know who to reach out to as they go on into adulthood and navigate the world from a different lens. All right, so our school-based services is just our truancy prevention, also violence reduction. We definitely see that our youth now are fighting a lot more in school, which is not only leading to, distractions and taking away from their academics, but also oftentimes it's leading to criminal charges as well. So we want to try to prevent all of that. We definitely want to make sure that our youth are receiving their education and being supported in that. Sometimes it's just a matter of transportation. So bridging that gap, maybe if they, if the parent is working or there's some sort of a barrier, the child isn't able to get themselves up and off to school, they might miss the bus or something along those lines, and then they just don't go. So we want to be able to kind of bridge that gap of getting them to school. But again, putting in additional services in place, like what happens 6 months from now when you're not in the program and you miss the bus, how are you going to get to school? So connecting them with bus passes, alternative supports in the community, other nonprofits that provide that service, whatever that looks like and is realistic to that child and family. Because once they are on their own out in the world, right, like they're going to need to be able to help themselves get where they need to be and still, fulfill their goals that they have for themselves. We work a lot, like I'd mentioned before, we worked with Lafayette High School for a year to go into the school and provide our anger management curriculum in a pro-social setting. And then we were also able to meet with the youth one-on-one. And then we're also able to go to the home, every so often as well to see like how is what we're working on at school coming over into the home and working on and addressing what is going on underlying that is preventing them from being successful at school. We can also refer out for tutoring. Again, some of these youth want to graduate and go on to a post-secondary or get their GED or learn a trade or any of those kinds of things. But the barrier is access. The barrier is transportation. The barrier is, well, I can't afford to go to college or I can't afford to go to a trade school. So one of the things I'm getting ready to talk to you guys about is our Tom Jeffers Endowment Fund. I think it's a couple slides on, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And that's another resource to help as far as from the education standpoint and post high school or GED or whatever that looks like. So also the violence interruption, I've kind of talked a little bit about that, just choose to change, safe streets, incredible messengers. What does those words mean, right? We see them on the screen. What does it mean? Just meaning like creating the culture in our community that we as a whole want things to be different. Some of our youth that we work with have just kind of lost sight of just loving and caring for one another, and that we all have an individual responsibility to keep each other and our community safe. And so what does that look like? It might be us showing up at, I remember very vividly, my youngest is 18 months old now. So about 2 years ago, I was very pregnant and, just being called out to the scene of an escalated situation and being able to help that youth to calm down and react better and handle things better. But other situations too, right? Like, is this an in-home thing or is this there needs to be mediation? Is this a community thing? So being able to identify if two youth have conflict or multiple youth have conflict, can we mediate this safely? Can we talk to them about like, let's start living together in harmony and peace and out of love instead of shooting at each other or getting physically violent or fighting or those kinds of things. So myself and my assistant director, as well as some of our other upper leadership, traveled to Baltimore this past year to complete a training with Dr. Akil Bashir, who is the nation's only certified violence interruption trainer. And so it's very extensive training, just talks about like, how can we be the change and how can we keep our community safe and be on the ground when something is going on to be preventative. So we have received that certification and that training. We are included in those conversations with community partners and first responders that if something is going on, we can be looped into it and help with that mediation and crisis management and de-escalation. We have that rapport with the kids that sometimes they are, they'll listen to us a little bit more, but also, mending that relationship. We want our youth to respect our police department and other first responders, and working on that relationship to make sure that we're all working together and having that it takes a village mentality. So some of these things I've kind of talked a little bit about, so I won't spend too much time but when I talk about our core principles, these are the things that we do. I mentioned before, what do you need? How can we help? How can we work together and how can we give back? And that's really embodied in all of this that you will see here. We, the first 30 to 45 days that we're working with a new client is really just built on building that rapport and that relationship and creating that partnership with the parents. And then we come together for a child and family team meeting, and that's where we invite all of the other providers that may be working or should be working with this youth and family. And then let's see, what can we do together to work as a team to support this child and family, not just now, but when they transition out into this world as a young adult, helping them be successful and thus, supporting and giving back to our community. We definitely want to make sure that we focus on all of these things that I've already mentioned, community-based care, focusing on the strengths, partnering with the child and family, definitely being cultural competent and acknowledging that representation matters. And then unconditional caring. While we walk this journey with our clients and families, sometimes we have bumps in the road and it can be very challenging, but we continue to show up and let our youth and family know that no matter what, we're not going anywhere. We're here to help and support you. I still have clients and families from 4 or 5 years ago that reach out because they've, hit a bump in the road and they just need a little bit of support, and I can refer them. And they know that if they can't find a resource based on what we've already given them, they know that they can reach out and that we can connect them to other community resources that they may need. So just kind of dives into all of that a little bit more, how we build that team and everybody is an equal partner and we're very strength-based and individualized. So some of the examples I've given you guys today might just be 1 or 2 of our kids. Everything that we do in our wraparound services are very individualized to what each youth and each family needs. So we definitely want to make sure that we are including all of these aspects in the work that we're doing, and we want it to be youth and family led. We want them to give them access to all of the resources, but also empower them to be able to not just know what resources to go to, but feel like they have the confidence and the skill set to reach out to those services. I can't tell you how many youth and families I work with that are like, I know this resource is there, but I don't know how to reach out. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And then they don't have the confidence to do that. So they're not utilizing a service that could be really helpful because of that. So we definitely want to empower them to be able to utilize the services once they're aware that they exist. We use different assessment tools when starting to work with the new youth. Again, very focused on understanding from the parent's perspective or the caregiver's perspective, what is going on, but also strengths and interest based. Like, I cannot emphasize enough that it doesn't matter what is going on in our life and how chaotic or upside down things feel. We all have things that we're passionate about and that we're good at. So let's focus on that and let's build off of that. And then, especially with young people, you really get the buy-in there, right? Because we're not just telling them you need to do this and this. We're saying, hey, what do you want to do? What do you feel like you need to do? They're an active part of it. We definitely want to consider safety. Our city has been through a lot, our nation has been through a lot. So making sure that we're assessing anything that could be, potentially dangerous or anything like that. And then when we talk about the life domains, we have 11 different life domains that we consider when we're assessing and talking with our youth and families. And these are all the gaps that we're trying to fill. So we talk about family, we talk about residence, what does that look like? Do you have a stable home? Are you able to, support the home? Do you have all the food that you need? Just making sure that the basic needs are met first. And then we can dive into, medical. Are there any diagnoses that are not being met? We don't know, like, we've never been assessed. Do we need to refer out? Are there mental health needs? Like, what is going on? And a lot of the times they just don't know. Like, they'll tell us all these things are going on, but no, we don't have any mental health needs, or we don't have any diagnoses, because they don't know what exists, and they don't know how to find out if there's something else going on that is driving that. We talk a lot about do you have a medical card? Do you have a primary care provider? Do you know how to get those things, and helping them connect to the right resources that can help them obtain those things that they don't have it. We talk about education and employment. Do they have a job? Do they want to have a job? What type of work would they like to do? Do they need support in, obtaining a food handler's license or different things like that? What is their highest level of education? All of those kinds of things we assess at the very beginning, but then we talk about it all throughout the length of the time that they are with us. We do a So once we assess like what are the needs, and we build that family team, we also say, okay, now these are the things that we're going to work on. So we definitely want to make sure that we have formal supports and informal supports as a part of that family team. So we want to be collaborative with all other possible service providers, school supports, mental health, behavioral health providers, any community resources. But then we also want to have those informal supports as well, in the community, family, non-family friends, but also like let's incorporate the church or the community centers or other service providers. Just making sure that this family has every bit of support that they could possibly need. So a lot of these things I've already talked about, we're there 24/7 for our clients and families, but I want to emphasize on the building the skills part, because that is where our curriculum come in. So once we've done the assessment and we've gotten to know, we've built the rapport, we can see, okay, what does this individual need to succeed when they're 18, 19, 20, 25? Like, how can they be successful on their own and in this community? So we do a life skills assessment to see what life skills they have, and which ones need to be developed a little bit more. And then we do a 8 to 10 week life skills curriculum with all of our youth, so that we're working on, whatever it is that they need to work on. It can be anything from, hygiene, and that could be just your basic like showering, right? Or it could be regular dental appointments or regular primary care, things like that go into it. We talk about, budgeting and money management, cooking, even just not just how to cook, but if I want to make spaghetti, what do I need? Not just the food, but what tools, all those kinds of things. And then we also focus on the cooking, and part of being out in the world on your own and cooking for yourself is also cleaning up after yourself. And we talk about all of those things with the youth. And we don't just talk though, like we go through a lesson and then we do it. We take them either to our office, or we go into their home, depending on the comfort level, or we take them somewhere in the community and we do all of those things together. We take them to different places where they can utilize resources. We take them on college tours. We talk to them about different trade schools. We go over how many credits are needed to graduate. We go over, how to apply for financial aid. We talk about nutrition and why that is important. So anything and everything that is needed, and then connecting them to different resources, showing them, Arbor Youth Services, Community Action, the Habitat or the Restore, different places that they can go. Here's this building and here's what you would go there for. The health department, the different clinics, all the things. Like, we don't just tell them where those things are. We get in our car and we drive them there and say, this is where we go to get there, and this is how you could get there on your own. And we do it again and again and again so that they feel very comfortable. It's not like a one and done. We give them the resource and expect that they're going to remember everything. So the entire time that we're doing the life skills, we're really walking that together. But we also do an anger management curriculum, because a lot of times by the time the young people come to us, they are angry. They have really big emotions. They have a lot that they have been through. And so we want to help work on that, work on coping skills, work on support, support systems. We also have a strengthening families curriculum. And with that, it's exactly what it sounds like, right? Like strengthening that family unit so they can be their best selves and support one another, even when they're grown. I think a lot of our young people think they're like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because I'll be 18 soon. I don't know. I still call my mom, I'm adopted. And so I kind of have my own like lived experience. But now that I'm older, like I really appreciate that, my adoptive mom is available and reachable, and she still supports me well into adulthood. And I hope that my children know when they're on their own. But a lot of these kids don't feel that. Like, that is not their mindset. That is not their belief. That, they are of the belief that when I'm 18, I am on my own and I have to be able to do everything on my own. And so we want to empower them to be able to do that, but also strengthen that family unit so that they can have a stronger, better, more connected, bonded, nurturing relationship with their family or caregiver or whoever that is for them, a support system of some sort. They don't have to feel like they have to do everything on their own in this world. And again, some of this stuff kind of gets a little bit repetitive. I feel like we've talked about all of these things already, just always being there rapidly, fluidly, just always available to support our families, again, within their homes and within their communities, and being collaborative to everybody that is working with this family to make sure that we're giving them all of the support that is needed. We definitely want to be trauma informed and keep that at the very, at the forefront of all of our work. And like I said before, that can be so many different things. We recognize that trauma has its own lens, and trauma to me and trauma to you and trauma to a youth that we're working with is not the same. And so we all have our own lens of trauma and what that means to us and how it is affecting our life or has affected our life and how it may affect our life in the future. So just making sure that we are being aware of that and not putting the word trauma in a box and only being, what the TV tells us that it is. And so making sure, again, we're creating a relationship with our youth and their families and their communities, and all the different service providers so that we can help them to just be successful in life and have a long-term goals and a good future. So another big component of that is our economic opportunities. We have several different programs. YAPWorks and Supported Work are two where we can work with not just the youth, young adults or the adults in the home, grandparents, everybody, and to help them connect with jobs. Our Supported Work, I kind of like to refer to it as it's kind of like a YAP temp agency, because basically we partner with businesses in our community that are in line with whoever the individual is, their interests, and we will get them, set up with a job where basically we will pay them for the first 90 days while they are learning the job and learning the skills and getting familiar with that. And then the hope is that at the end of the 90 days, the employer would then hire them, formally and officially. So that's why I kind of think of a temp agency with that. But that's not limited to just the youth that is enrolled. And that is also not limited to them, while they're 17. It can be once they age out. It can be their parent or their guardian or their sibling, just anybody that we're, working with in our YAP WRAP model, helping all of them to have economic opportunities that they may not otherwise be able to have or find. And then also YAPWorks is more training them to be prepared to work. So helping them get education and training and things along those lines. I see the chat, so I'm just going to look at that really quick and see if, okay, this is just Vanessa sending out some things. Thank you. Okay, I want to make sure I wasn't missing anybody's questions or anything. The other thing I really wanted to talk about is our Tom Jeffers Endowment Fund. I mentioned that earlier. So any young person who has ever been in our program, it does not matter how many years ago it was, if they were one of our first people in 75, or if they just got out of our program recently, they are eligible for our Tom Jeffers Endowment Fund for continuing education. What they would do is just reach out to us and say, hey, I was in the program at this day and time, and now I've decided to go back to school or pursue something secondary. It could be a trade, doesn't necessarily have to be college. And they would write just a statement about what it is their goals are and why they want to do that, and why they would like to be considered for the endowment fund. And then we would also write a letter of recommendation based on our time working with them. And then they're eligible to receive that. Is not an earth-shattering amount of money. It's $1,000 per year that they are in post, some sort of continuing education. But we do find that it takes that burden off of, supplies or books or some of those kinds of things. So it is helpful in pursuing those continuing education. This is specifically helpful, again, that transition age youth, like maybe they decided not to do some sort of continuing education now, but maybe when they're 20 or 23 or 25, they did decide that they're in a place that they wanted to do that. So it doesn't matter how long it's been since they have participated in our program, they are eligible to apply for that. So I've already kind of talked a little bit about YAPWorks and explained, what that was and just training them. So it's basically just our learning system to help them be prepared for work. I talked about Supported Work. It's on average about 3 months. Like I said, it's kind of like our temp agency. And I will provide the PowerPoint as well. I'll give it to Vanessa to send out. And then I talked already about the endowment fund as well. And so, just some of this stuff is kind of repetitive, and I know we're crunching on time, so I'll wrap it up here. But just making sure that everything that we are doing to support our young people, their family, and our community has a purpose and is very goal oriented in helping our youth and families to remain safely in their community and be successful, and thrive and have the supports that they need to do so and to do that. And so we've talked a lot about, the violence in our communities. Definitely want to making sure that we are being trauma informed, that we're providing racial equity and opportunities. A lot of the families that we work with are minority or marginalized families, and wanting to make sure that they are getting all opportunities and that they, are supported and not ignored in what it is that they need and the opportunities that are given to them. We want to be aware that some people are of the belief that, kind of like the imposter syndrome, like some people come in here and they think that they're not worthy of certain economic opportunities, or that they are not worthy of college. And that is absolutely, we know that is absolutely not the truth, but some people do have that belief. So we want to, change that narrative and give them every opportunity to do whatever it is that they have in their heart and their mind to do, and show them that they can do anything that they set their mind to, but help them to do that and support them and give them the opportunities to do so, regardless of their trauma or any injustices or inequities that they have experienced throughout their life. And that's everything that I have. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? I know I talked really fast and I said a lot, but I promise I'll share this as well as some other information about us.
So I want to thank our presenters for speaking to us today about these excellent resources. Thank you to Andrea, to Brittany, and to Ashley. Whether you are part of a REAC or not, these are some excellent resources that you can put in your toolbox. I want to let you know that our amazing REAC leaders are the people that connected me to these wonderful resources. So if you are part of a REAC and you don't have a representation from YAP, I know they're only available right now in certain counties, and they're hoping to be available in 7 counties by the end of the year. I encourage you to reach out to Ashley to see if they can come to your REAC. And as for Kentucky SCAHA, I know you guys are statewide. And so I have met Andrea at a REAC meeting before. And so if you are interested in having her come to your REAC meeting, I know that all REAC meetings are currently virtual and or have hybrid options. So please reach out to her and send her your meeting links. And I'll put their contact information in that follow-up email that we'll send out hopefully sometime, maybe towards the beginning of next week. Before I close us out, does anybody have any questions for any of our presenters that spoke this morning? All right. Well, if you do, like I said, I'm going to put their contact information in that follow-up email. If you haven't already, please take a moment to complete the session evaluation that was put in the chat box. It'll also be put in the follow-up email. I also want to remind everybody that our next REAC Learning Series session is scheduled for March the 3rd at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the title is Grandparents and Relative Caregivers That Are Raising Children. This is part 1 of this session, and it's going to focus on the caregiver. So that session will include legislative changes regarding the funding, the resources that grandparents and or relative caregivers have access to, and the data depicting how many grandparents and relative caregivers are currently raising grandchildren in Kentucky. It's also going to include the perspective of someone with lived experience speaking on her journey as a single grandparent raising grandchildren and the resources that have been helpful to her along the way. So we hope to see you there. I'm going to stick that flyer that includes that information into the chat box.